Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Sherry Brinkerhoff. Today is Pie Day. I'm affectionately known in my community as the Pie Lady, and today is definitely a pie day. So I wanted to share with you how to make pie crust. First, we have washed our hands and cleared the decks and ready for measuring. I have all my tools and all my ingredients out. First, I want to use the dip level pour method for measuring the flour. 2 cups of flour is what I'm going to use for a 2-crust pie. Now I'm going to add the salt. I never pour directly over the product I'm working on. I'm going to just pour this on in the measuring spoon over the sink, just in case I make any mistakes. And then bring it to the flour and pour it in. Now, using my pastry blender, I'm going to just gently stir the salt and the flour together. Next, it's time to put in the shortening. I use Crisco all vegetable shortening. Notice I buy it in a really large container because I make a lot of pies. This is a wonderful tool for measuring shortening. And you can just pop it right out and put it into that flour, ready for blending. Now that it's called cutting the shortening into the flour, and you just use a cutting motion with this pastry blender. You could use a couple of knives and crisscross them together. That's how I learned as a child. In fact, this recipe was introduced to me by my mother when I was about 10 years old, and I made my first pie crust for the Fresno District Fair for the 4-H entry, and it won my first blue ribbon. Not only that, but one of the judges came to me and asked if she could please have my recipe. So that was pretty exciting for a 10-year-old kid. Yeah. So I've been doing this for quite a few years. It's pretty simple, and it's really an easy way to make a savory pie for dinner, to make a dessert pie, all kinds of fun things you can do with pie crust. And once you get the knack of it, you can put a pie crust together faster than you can get in your car and go down to the store and buy one. And the results are so much better. You find this to be a very flaky pie crust. Okay, that's looking pretty good. There's some little pea-sized pieces. We'll get that all together. Now the next thing I want to do is to put in the water. I always use ice water to bind my ingredients together. It seems to just be a better way of doing. This amount of flour is going to take between 4 and 6 tablespoons of ice water. Because of the weather, it's a little warmer these days, it's probably going to take all 6. So I just put that in there. And I'm going to add the other 2. Once that's together, I'll use a fork to bind it together. So this is where it gets a little tricky. You have to kind of judge to see, is this going to be too sticky? Is it going to be too dry? Or is it going to be just right? Sort of the Goldilocks method. This looks pretty good. If it's going to be too dry, before you stir it completely together, you want to add a little bit more water. If it's too moist, reach over, get a little flour, sprinkle it on, blend it together, and you'll be fine. You just want to not overdo the flour. You don't want it to be too dry, because that's what produces that cracking when you're trying to roll it out. All right, ready to form it into a ball and get ready to roll it out. All right, we want to dip those hands pretty good into that flour. Bring some of that over here to the work surface where I'm going to be rolling out the pie crust. And then we use these floured hands to bring all that dough into a ball. And all the goodies out of the bowl. This ball should feel really just kind of soft, like a freshly washed baby's bottom. Cut that in half, and we're going to then flatten it out a little bit here on this floured board. Reflour that part and place it in the center. making a kind of a flat disc to help with the rolling process. I have a rolling pin that spins. I much prefer that to the stationary kind. And then we want to just use some of that extra flour on the board and get that rolling pin completely floured. Don't ever do that over your pie crust. It then puts too much flour on the pie crust and tends to dry out. And we want to just do kind of a circular motion around a clock almost. Just making it a circle as we go. You can feel some movement. When you begin to feel the resistance, then you want to stop that particular motion. And then I'll show you what we'll do next. We'll turn it over. We can probably get a little bit more out of here. Set that aside. Now, we're going to pick this up, just kind of loosen it from the work surface. And then put it over my hand. A little extra dough there. Re-sprinkle some flour on the work surface, and now it's upside down from what it was before. Now we want to add a little more flour to this rolling pin and roll it again. You kind of have to watch its little tendency to maybe crack in a few places, and you want to mend that as you go so the cracks don't get bigger and get in the way of putting it in your pie plate. Now that looks pretty good. You want it big enough that your dough will fit into the pie plate with some extra around the edge. Now the trick is finding a place that will be the easiest way to grab it and pull it up and over in half, pick it up, bring it to the pie plate, place that fold just about halfway into the pie plate, flip it back over, and then gently with the back of my finger I just push this down to the crevices of the pie plate. Now it's kind of a ragged edge. We want to take care of that. So all we need left is about a 1/2 inch. So we just kind of trim this off right here till we have about 1/2 inch left. Now the reason for that is we want something to fold under and stand up to create the fluted edge that makes the pie look pretty. And for that matter, helps hold in the filling. Now those little pieces I'm tossing away, we're actually going to use those a little bit later, and I'll show you how we work with those. All right. Now, we want to just stand this up on its edge. So turning under that 1/2 inch and standing it up all the way around, being gentle. We don't want to tear it. And notice it's pliable enough that it's not drying and cracking and falling apart. That's what you want. Now once you have that edge up all the way around, then it comes time for crimping it. This is the way I do it. Finger and thumb just together like this all the way around. Now as you do this, especially if you're going to do a blind bake, you want to make this point come a little bit over the edge and push it down almost like a hook. That way, when it bakes in the oven without filling, it won't sink quite so far down into the pie plate, and you'll have a nice edge all the way around. All right, there we have our crimped edge. Now that fork we used before, we're going to take and make lots of little holes all over the crust. Not only on the bottom, but also on the side edges. And lots of holes. Now these holes are going to come back together as it bakes, so you don't have to worry about your filling leaking through. But this will help to keep bubbles from forming and will help to keep your pie crust in place. The next thing you want to do before we put it in the oven is to take a piece of foil and slip down right over there and just gently press it into place around the whole pie shell. Right up there on the edges and down to the bottom. And then you can use any kind of weight you want. I happen to use these little decorator gems that weight the pie down while it bakes. And we're going to put this in a 475 degree oven for about 7 minutes with this all in place. At that time, I will check it and then pull this out and put the pie crust back in for remaining 7 or 8 minutes, however long it takes to get it brown and just nicely evenly done all the way around. If you don't happen to have some of these little gems in your household, you could use rice or beans, for example, and use the same idea. However, don't ever use your rice after that for anything but your weights and certainly your beans, because once they've been in the oven, they won't be good for cooking up. Okay, let's put it in the oven for its first bake and see how it does. After I've removed my pie crust from the surface, I want to just kind of clean this up a little bit. It's got some pie crust that's stuck to it a little bit, even though we've floured our board, and we just want to get rid of that off of the board so it doesn't get into the next pie crust. We're going to reflour and ready for the next roll. Now I have a little bit of pie dough left over. And I'll have to tell you, the reason I have pie dough left over is because I can roll my pie crust out thinner by flipping it and re-rolling it in that process I showed you earlier. It makes a thinner pie crust, meaning fewer calories per piece. And it also gives me some extra pie dough to play around with for extra things. What I'd like to show you now, what I'm going to do, one of the pies I'll be making this week is a pecan pie that I want to decorate. It's for a special occasion. I'm going to decorate it with some fun little things on top. Since it's for a school occasion, I have a little boy cutter and a little girl cutter that I can use for creating some fun little dough pieces on top of the pie. The baking process probably will take 5 or 6 minutes for these because they're smaller, and it doesn't matter if they get a little puffy, it's okay, but they'll be nice and light brown and be really fun for decorating the pie. Check these blind bake crusts we've put in for the first 7 minutes. And let's take this out just a little ways so we can take a peek underneath. Yep, we don't want it to rip away the pie shell that's there. Just take those out, set them aside. Scoot that back in. Same with this one. Just lift that right out. Just a little twirl here. Some even baking. Reset this for 8 minutes and then see what it looks like in 8 minutes. If it's nice and golden brown, they'll be ready to take out and cool for the fillings. Those look really nice. Nice and even brown. Not too much shrinkage. And there you have pie crust ready for cooling first, and then filling with a cream filling or any number of things that don't have to be baked.